Buenos dias. Welcome in to our Scholar Dog studio. I'm your guide to all things science, Mr. Samuel Rickert, and today we're continuing on with our series, Science Term of the Day. This is a great short video for those of you teaching environmental science or biology and teaching about the biogeochemical cycles. I hope you will show this to your students or to your kids if you're homeschooling or working with your kids at home. This will not only explain what that word is to them, but also show them why that's important to pique their interest. Let's jump in. Okay, so take a minute right now, see if you can define the term biogeochemical cycle as it is used in a scientific context. This is a great time for you to practice your skills. And also, I always encourage students to answer the question, even if they get it wrong. When they're first learning something, it's important to have them practice writing out their answers so they can see their growth over time. So take a minute to try to define this term. Okay, I'm going to set the timer. I will now define biogeochemical cycles in 1 minute or less. Here we go. Start. Okay, so like a lot of words, we can break this up into its component parts to understand what's going on. And in science, we have very specific and careful definitions. So we know that something's cycling. It's going from one stage to another. What is it that's cycling? It's chemicals that have a bio and a geo process. Well, what's bio? So we have chemicals that go in our bio or living cycles and geological components. So what are these chemicals? They're elements. There's things that are going from living sinks, you, me, plants, everything else have these elements in them. But they also have cycles that are not living, rocks, dirt, a geological part of this cycle. So we're going from one to the other. That's really all it is. So just take the word, break it apart. It's elements that are essential, and it's going through living and geological cycles. So that's our definition. I want to take a minute, though, and say, why does this matter? Why should we care about a biogeochemical cycle? Again, this is a great thing to think about whenever you're starting with a new topic. Does this matter to me? Well, unless you are a sentient AI listening to this video, this should matter what? To you, because you're biological. If you want to be alive, which most of my viewers do, you should care about biogeochemical cycles. And indeed, this is why we study them in the first place. Notice the first key suffix is bio, biological, living things. In fact, we know that living things are composed of the following elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and a little bit of other things. But these are the big 5 elements that make up most of what makes you, a plant, and other things chemically speaking. So if we can trace where all of these things come from, we can understand where we are getting the chemical components of what makes us alive. So again, why does this matter? Because we should care about staying alive. We should care about getting the nutrients and the macromolecules we need in order to stay alive. Well, to understand where each of these come from, we need to trace where they come from in biology, but also geology. Yes, we eat plants. We eat other living things. We're what's called heterotrophs, meaning we eat other things, and we get our energy from other things. But where does it ultimately come from? It ultimately comes from geological processes. The first one that you study in a class is carbon, because in terms of percentage, it's the most important, and that's very appropriate. Where does the carbon that we consume come from? Well, let's take the simplest example. Let's say we eat a plant. That plant got the carbon by taking in carbon through a process called carbon fixation from the atmosphere. And then that plant can then be eaten by us. And so it'll travel through the food chain. Now, what does geology have to do with this? Well, it has to do with the fact that when everything dies, so if this plant dies and is not eaten, or if, as will happen one day, I will die, we will die, and through the process of decomposition, that carbon will be put into the soil, and it could even be fossilized into fossil fuels, or into limestone, or into any other geological process that has carbon. Why do you think fossil fuels are called fossil fuels? They come from living things that have decomposed and through the natural chemical processes become fossil fuels. So that's just a very quick snapshot of carbon. As you learn more about the chemical processes that brings each of these elements and others to living things, you can really have a deep appreciation for the beautiful balance of all of these cycles, how it's beautifully designed to get us and other living things what we need. In the last example, we'll just talk about carbon one last time, is there's a cool relationship between carbon in plants and in animals, in autotrophs and in heterotrophs like us. Plants take in carbon from the atmosphere and they breathe out oxygen. In the meantime, we breathe in oxygen and release carbon dioxide as part of cellular respiration. What do you notice about these two processes? They're complementary like my two hands. They fit together perfectly. That just shows the beautiful balance and design of these biogeochemical cycles that you can only appreciate by studying them more. Okay, that's it for this time. I had a longer video, but thank you for that. Thank you as always for your time and attention. Shout out to ScholarDog for letting me use the studio. At ScholarDog, they're committed to using AI for good. Thank you as always, and I'll see you next time.